Hi guys, Sean here at Go Big Bore or Go Home. Wanted to do a quick video about 1911s. Now as you can see, we've got 5 different ones here. And if you're familiar with big bore shooting, you're probably familiar with not only the 1911, but of course the cartridge was originally chambered for the 45 ACP. Now, I've been a big fan of these guns for a very long time, but like most people, I didn't know some of the ins and outs and some of the different options and some of the evolution. I didn't want to do a complete evolution video, as if you really want to know about the development of the 1911 pistol and how it went from where it started to the final production, I would recommend checking out a video on Forgotten Weapons by Ian McCullum, where he talks about the Colt 1911 as it started from the 1900 to the 1911 model that was eventually brought into service. But I wanted to take a few minutes to kind of show something that's very basic to something that's much more customized. So got a few different ones here, and we're going to kind of go over them just model by model and kind of show some of the differences so that you can see for yourself why one model might be better for you, or if perhaps you might like a different one. Okay, so we're starting here with something that's very bare bones, very basic, but if you want to know what a 1911 is, this is a good place to start. In 1926, the Army realized that they kind of needed to update the standard 1911 that they'd had since, well, 1911, and they made a few changes to what they call the 1911 A1. Most 1911s today are going to be modeled after the A1 for the fact that it really did make some better improvements. So let's go through those real quick. You got better sights on the A1 compared to the original 1911. One of the other ones is you have this nice little scoop here behind the trigger to make access easier. So you can see that there. If you're looking at an older 1911 that was supposed to be issued during one of the wars, if it doesn't have this on the frame, that's a good sign that it's probably an original 1911 versus the A1. They did make some changes with the trigger. They moved it back a little, so again, it was easier to get your finger on it without pressing it. And a couple other ones that I think are really interesting. First is this mainspring housing. Now, if you look here, you can see that this has got a little lanyard on it, but it actually looks like it's a piece that comes out. There's a little pin right there you punch out. This holds the mainspring housing that helps provide some resistance for the thumb safety. This is kind of a cool feature, by the way. I'll explain what this is in a minute. But they did this to kind of give people less of a straight grip, something that was a little bit more contoured to your hand. So I'll kind of flip it around so you can kind of see it. The idea was this gave you a little bit more of a palm swell down here. And surprisingly, a lot of people like myself really prefer a flat mainspring housing, but that's to come. One of the others was this beaver tail safety. Now, 1911s have a couple of safety features. Obviously, one is a manual safety, which is on this side for right-handed folks like myself. Once the hammer is cocked, it can be engaged, and it stops the slide from moving. Also stops the trigger from being depressed. But it also has this thumb safety here. Now this is kind of a nice feature because, as you can see, if someone just presses the trigger or the trigger is pressed, you know, the gun won't go off. But this thumb safety, once depressed, will allow it to go. Now one of the problems that they did seem to have with the 1911 was that when the gun would be cocked backward when you're firing it, so you know, when it would cycle, and let me try, I'm going to make this easy on myself. Here we go. When it would come back, the hammer was actually longer than the safety here on the original 1911. And so when the gun would recoil, this hammer would dig into people's hand. It was called hammer bite. So in the 1911 A1, they actually lengthened this beaver tail safety. And you can see right here that, bring it up, that the safety now covers that. So you don't have to worry about that slide bite, or the hammer bite, I'm sorry, not slide bite. But this is a very basic model. You've got your double diamond checkered grips. This is exactly what you would have been issued if you were in World War II. And I had this lent to me by a friend, as well as the next firearm. Ronaldo's a huge buff of World War II firearms. Absolutely loves them. So he wanted to make sure he got one that was as close to the World War II era firearms as he could. He got the Springfield GI, which is darn near perfect. But they don't make this anymore, but they do make something called the Mil-Spec. It's very similar. So this is a good place to start if you're not familiar, if you're considering one. This is a very basic model. Like most of the 1911s of that era, you have a single stack magazine that holds about 7 rounds. And I'm going to turn the gun here this way, and as you can see, the guide rod is actually short. So there's a plug right there. The guide rod does not stick out the front. Actually, I'm a real big fan of the 1911 A1, pretty much as you see it. The only thing I'm not a fan of, and I'm being very honest, is I really don't like this round mainspring housing. So let's move to the next model, which is an updated model from Colt. All right, so what we're looking at here is a Colt 1991 A1. Essentially, this was Colt's kind of a modern day equivalent to the 1911 A1. And I want to take a moment to really observe something. I'm going to bring this closer so you can see it. One thing I think Colt has always done well is their bluing. And this is a really nice example. The light's a little bright, so I'm going to kind of tilt it so you can see, but that bluing just is a beautiful shine. So just turning it again here. Ronaldo, if you're watching, this is a fantastically beautiful piece. This bluing is really something. Really like the way it looks. Anyway, coming back from the aesthetics, as you can notice, there's one major difference from the one we just looked at, which was this has the flat mainspring housing instead of that rounded one. Now, as said before, I like this. This to me is more comfortable. It allows the gun to sit more ergonomically in my hand. But the other 1911 A1 features are here. You know, you've got, again, that little cutout. You've got the nice little, you know, stop here so that you don't get hammer bite. And let me turn it this way so I can let the hammer down easy without slamming it. There we go. And you got the safety, you know, pretty much everything. So what's the big difference? Even if you can take a look, it's got the same kind of, you know, short recoil spring. Even has, now I put a 7-round magazine here, but you can get a 7 or 8 round magazine with this. So what's the difference? Well, doesn't look like one, but I'm going to show you. If I turn this up here, there it is. That little button you see, that is a firing pin safety. So that was one of the big updates, and I have to give some props to Colt here. If you're looking to modernize a firearm, this is a simple and effective way to do it. A firing pin safety is a great feature that really keeps the firing pin blocked and unable to go forward until the trigger is released. This is very common, of course, in striker-fired guns. Glock made it very popular. However, here's where it has come up as a trouble for some people who like 1911s. Despite the practicality of it, it changes the internals ever so slightly. But you know, you can't change one part of a system without changing a few things. So this is what is known as a Series 80 1911. And everything prior is Series 70. So if you're somebody who wants to do any kind of a modification or upgrades to your firearm, a lot of folks don't want to get a Series 80 simply because, well, you know, none of the Series 70's parts are guaranteed to fit. Most will. But there are some that you're going to have to change because the gun is a little different. How different? Not much, but it is something that if you buy a 1911 and you get a Series 80, make sure with any aftermarket parts, you know they fit before you buy it. You don't want to waste your money. By the way, before we move on, I did want to show on your standard mil-spec 1911 A1, this is what it looks like in that area, so you can see there's no firing pin stop. One more thing I did want to share about these two 1911s. If you look at the 1911 here in my left hand, you notice where that ejection port is very high, and this one is much lower. As you can see, it's much lowered here, so it allows for better ejection of a spent case. In some of the videos where I've talked about 45 Super, this is something that they would do. They would lower this ejection port and they would flare it. Now this isn't flared, but it is lowered, and I do think this is a definite improvement even for just standard 45 auto. It's going to help your reliability to have a slightly bigger ejection port. So what we're looking at here is what's called a Legacy Sports Citadel. Now this is a more modern kind of, how should I put this, tricked out 1911 stock from a factory that you can pick up. What's interesting about the Legacy Sports Citadel is it's made at the same factory in the Philippines as Rock Island Armory. Now, one thing I will say is the stock grips that came on this were checkered. I didn't care for them personally, so this is really the only change I've made as I put on these nice zebra wood grips. These were made by Rasco, which unfortunately is no longer in production. Very sad. They made really nice wood grips. But back to the 1911. So some of the tricked out features you're going to notice on this one. Again, it has the flat mainspring housing. It has an 8-round extended magazine. So you can see. Now I've had some trouble with feeding from this magazine. I swapped springs for a different spring and it works a little better. But you're going to find that too sometimes with 1911s, is that some folks make a great 1911 but a terrible 1911 magazine. And magazines can make all the difference. I put Wilson Combat magazines in here and Chip McCormick, and also 7-round Springfield magazines. None of those jammed on this firearm, just this one. So there you go. But there we are. So again, moving along. So some of the nicer features, again, you got the flat mainspring housing as opposed to the standard A1 curved. You've got the extended magazine that holds 1 extra round. You have a skeletonized hammer, which is lighter, so it moves quicker. You have this nice beaver tail safety, which what I like about it personally is it really allows you to get a nice firm grip when you're shooting. Really allows you to get that good tight grip so that you can control recoil instead of, you know, if it's not high enough, it'll move in your hand. This really is nice. And then when the hammer's back, as you can see, it's very well protected. There is no chance you're ever going to deal with hammer bite. It also has these Novak style sights, which I'm going to kind of show you, which are really nice. Very simple though. They're not white dots or anything like that. They're just very basic, but they're nice. It has the front side serrations. I know some folks have said, well, what's that for? Well, if you ever want to check in here, you know, it's kind of hard to do it to see if your chamber's loaded from there. But when you have these front slide serrations, you can kind of open it really easy from the front. So I like it. I think they look cool too, but that's an aesthetic thing. But it does make it a little bit easier, provide you another option. It also has an ambidextrous safety. So unlike the 2 previous 1911s where we saw the safety was only for right-handers, you know, if you're right-handed, you know, you could cock your safety there. I'm doing it on the left side, but if you were a lefty, you were kind of out in the cold. Well, most 1911s you can convert to this, but this one comes stock with a nice safety that's ambidextrous. So for the lefties, this is a wonderful thing. It also has a slightly skeletonized trigger, but this one is not adjustable, which is a feature we'll get into later that people like. It's adjustable for take-up. And I'm going to bring up the ejection port. Not only is it lowered, but as you can see from this, it's flared. So it's open a little bit more, a little easier for something to get out. So, and it has a full-length guide rod, which is kind of, I'm 6 of one, half dozen of the other on this. I've seen 1911s that have the standard guide rod, no problems, no malfunctions. And I've seen some with this, same story. So is one better than the other? I'm going to leave that for you guys to decide. That's up to you. So you can see the features are pretty much the same from there. One thing then, of course, is when you look here, you can see that the plug is actually just a ring and it's open. Let's see if I can turn it this way, as you can see, so that the full-length guide rod can go through. But this is a really good economy 1911. It's got some of the nicer features without being too expensive and while still being pretty well made. I've had this now for about 6 months and I've been very impressed and very happy with it. It's pretty reliable with a good magazine, even with hollow points, even with plus Ps. This is about $520 at the time of this video at a local gun store. That's an estimate. Well worth the money and really enjoyed. So again, the Legacy Sports Citadel. All right, and so what we're looking at here is another Springfield Armory. This is what's referred to as the loaded. I think it now goes by the Range Officer Elite or the Range Officer Loaded Elite. This is slightly different than what you get now, but you can essentially get the same gun. Now, I wanted to show one thing I've done here is I've put on some of these nice G10 grips that I got offline. I'm trying to remember the name of the place I got. I'll put it on the video. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But, oh, Stoner CNC. They make really, really nice grips. This comes with all the same features that I was showing before. You know, you've got the ambidextrous safety, you've got the beaver tail, the skeletonized hammer. One thing I particularly like is it has this nice skeletonized trigger that if, I'm going to try and do this here so we can look in, and right in there, if you look, there's a little hole for an Allen wrench. And what you can do is you can adjust the take-up on the trigger. So that You know, it won't actually make the trigger itself lighter, but you can adjust this take up so you can adjust how much creep is in there before the trigger is actually set off. So let me kind of, well, let me do this. It also has the full length guide rod, which is supposed to be good for reliability. This one's a little dirty. I've been shooting this one lately. A really nice shooter. And this one comes with a stock 7-round magazine as well. If you want the extra round, absolutely go with the 8. I like the 8 from Wilson Combat. There's, I think they're called the 47D. But I will also say that the Springfield 1911 magazines and 7 rounds that I've had have been flawless. They have functioned extremely well. So that's really nice. As you can see, I got it with this little cutout. You can, that if you go to Stoner CNC, you can get it with or without. One of the other things that's really nice about this one, and you can see it looks like these are white dot sights, but they're actually night sights. They're tritium, so they glow in the dark. They're slightly irradiated and encapsulated, so you're safe. You don't have to worry about them causing any problem for you. I haven't had a single jam out of this thing. This thing hasn't jammed in about 300 to 500 rounds that I've had it. Usually there's a break-in period with 1911s, but this thing's been flawless. And it's eaten, you know, regular ammo, plus P, ball, hollow points. So it's great. And I really like a few of the features to me that make life simple if you find yourself in a bad situation. You've got the ambidextrous safety, you've got the night sights, you've got the front cocking serrations. So just ergonomically speaking, the manual of arms for this is fantastic, and it's very intuitive, and it provides all the options you might actually need if you were in an oh no scenario. So again, this for me would be my self-defense 1911. This is a Springfield Range Officer, and they have now changed the name to the Range Officer Target. So if you're looking to get this specific model, that's what you want to find. But I've made a few changes to this one, which you'll see as we go along. But I want to talk about a couple of the features that I particularly like that it comes with. It comes with these adjustable Bomar style sights. Now, when you look at the sight picture, it's this really nice, high, you know, kind of edge. And I know it seems a little counterintuitive, but it's a really nice sight when you're looking at your target. I wouldn't mind having a fiber optic, but that's kind of a, you know, that's not a big deal. I might change at some point, but right now I'm pretty happy with these sights, and they're very, very easy to use. One of the other things I like is the skeletonized hammer and the beaver tail. It also has a flat mainspring housing and a skeletonized trigger with adjustable take-up, just like the other one. There's a couple things to me that are really nice, and one of those is it doesn't have an ambidextrous safety. So as you can see there, I actually think it's a little more comfortable and easier to use without it. If it's just for target, I don't care if it has one, and I'd prefer it doesn't. I don't need, you know, I'm right-handed. I don't need to worry about an ambidextrous safety. So if it's for target pistols or, you know, just plinking, I'd rather it not have it. So for me, this is much better. I also like that it doesn't have the full-length guide rod because, again, this is just an aesthetics thing. I just like the way it looks. I haven't had any malfunctions with this firearm with the exception of any time I've changed something around in the functioning of it. I've had some hand loads that I made malfunction, but factory ammo has never, ever jammed, except for one point when I changed to a full-length guide rod and I used one of those little plastic gaskets. I was playing with it because they were cheap, and I was like, well, I wonder if it makes a difference. Short story, it affected my reliability. Now, there's two main things that I've changed. One is fairly obvious, and that's the grips. These I got from Altamont. I really liked the look of them. I thought they were really cool. So, again, that's just personally for me. And the second is I changed out the mainspring housing to be smooth. It's a little easier on my hand, and to have a mag well. You can get mag wells that usually are part of this. This one is actually detachable, you can see. If you get one of these, I highly recommend, even though it's a 45 and not a Magnum caliber, go ahead and use blue Loctite on this, otherwise it will shake loose. I also have the Wilson Combat magazines. I've had my best reliability from these, which isn't to say there aren't other reliable mags, but these and the 7-round Springfield mags are the ones I personally prefer. And with the magwell, it's a nice clean look here. You know, you don't have it sticking out the end because the magwell's there. And with the magwell, the whole point, if you've never seen one, is it gives you this bevel so that when you go to reload, instead of trying to hit that perfect area, even if you get close, it gets right in there for you. So again, this has been a really nice gun. It shoots very, very accurately. And I will tell you, if you're looking for a nice target 1911 without spending a lot of money, the range officer target is, I think, around $800 at the time of this video, and it's a real bargain for what it is. You can get a nicer one, but you're going to pay for it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this little intro about 1911s. Sorry it went on for so long, but I really like these guns, and I find them really interesting, so naturally I like to talk about them. I really thought it would be kind of interesting also to show you, if you're new to 1911s, you want to get your own, how you can start with something that's very bare bones, very stock, but very, very functional and very popular, to maybe a little more modern and safe iteration, to whistles and bells, where you can go from something that's inexpensive to plink with, something you can rely on for safety, something that's really nice for the target range. So I do hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out, especially if you share the video. If you didn't like the video, well, thank you for giving us a try and sticking with us this long. And as always, guys, remember, go big bore or go home.